Gulf, threatening an already fragile ceasefire. Today, the U.S. military says it blew up 6 Iranian small boats in the Strait of Hormuz after Iran launched.
Wow, they blew up 6 jet skis, dude. Profound military achievement. Profound military accomplishment by the world's most powerful naval force. Okay? Wow, they blew up 6 go-fast boats. It's over. Fox News is going to write another article. Yeah, I don't really care.
Quote, multiple cruise missiles, drones, and small boats at U.S. Navy ships and commercial vessels. The exchange of fire happening just hours after President Trump announced that the U.S. will begin helping guide stranded ships out of the strait. Meantime, the UAE is accusing Iran of renewed missile and drone attacks, the first since early April, including a drone strike on an Emirati oil port, causing a large fire and injuring 3 people there, according to officials. Let's go to CNN's Kristen Holmes at the White House right now. So, Kristen, what is the administration saying as tensions with Iran appear to be escalating?
It's not just the tensions that are escalating, Boris. We're also hearing it in President Trump's rhetoric. He just did a brief phone interview with Fox in which he said essentially that if the Iranians target U.S. ships in the area, that they will be, quote, blown off the face of the earth. Now, during this interview, he also said that the Iranians were more malleable now, that he did believe that there could be some kind of negotiation that led to a deal. But I've got to tell you, we are in a very different place now than we were at the end of last week. I was hearing from U.S. officials at the end of last week, senior administration officials, who were saying that they felt really good about the direction that this was going in. Instead, now we're starting to see this really seem to devolve. And President Trump posted on social media about what we were seeing in the Strait, saying Iran has taken some shots at unrelated nations in respect to the ship movement. And he also noted it was a South Korean cargo ship. Then he essentially says that maybe South Korea should join them on this mission, talking about the war in Iran. And then he goes on to talk about the fast boats, which we've heard about, and then that tomorrow there's going to be another one of these press briefings by the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane. But where we are right now, talking to these officials, is it does not seem as though they are in a place where they feel that they can get to some kind of agreement here, which is very different again than what we heard at the end of last week.
Kristen Holmes, live force at the White House. Thank you so much. Let's turn to CNN national security correspondent Natasha Bertrand. Natasha, what are you learning as the U.S. and Iran are trading strikes now?
Yeah, Boris, our U.S. Central Command Chief, Admiral Bradley Cooper, he held a call with reporters earlier today, and he kind of outlined how the U.S. military is going about trying to guide these commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz, essentially via a huge U.S. military presence that involves guided missile destroyers, over 100 land and sea-based aircraft.
Yeah, it's incredible. He didn't even mention the ongoing strikes on the UAE law. Iran has taken some shots at unrelated nations with respect to the ship movement, Project Freedom, including a South Korean cargo ship. Perhaps it's time for South Korea to come and join the mission. We've shot down 7 small boats, or as they like to call them, fast boats. It's all they have left. Other than the South Korean ship, there has been, at this moment, no damage going through the strait. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, will have a news conference tomorrow morning. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. CENTCOM's commander wants to keep it a secret whether he knows if Iran has hit his own ships. Yeah, Commander Admiral Bradley Cooper says more commercial ships are en route to travel across the strait after 2 U.S. flags successfully traveled out of the strait. When I asked how many ships had been hit by Iran, he declined to give a number. Don't tell the enemy you know what they've been able to achieve. Seems great. Seems like a very seems like a resounding success, chat. Seems like a lot of victories are taking place. Sources tell me the idea of Dubai is stable. Please God. CENTCOM Chief Admiral Brad Cooper says UAE has exceptional capabilities and is well positioned to defend itself. UAE has been a great teammate to the U.S. Iran's military capabilities dramatically degraded, but that doesn't mean it's all gone. We need air support. You can do it. Oh my God. Trump is Pootler. Trump literally is Pootler. So this image, for those of you who don't know, if you're not like super autistic and tapped into, the situation monitoring for many years now, This image is from Syria specifically. Okay, it's and not just Ukraine, but also from the Syrian conflict as well. It's a Putin monkey meme. Okay, it's whenever Vladimir Putin does something unbelievably stupid, where he just like, writes off his allies or something of that sort, or just does something inexplicable. Okay, they'll put this meme up of Vladimir Putin as playing chess as a monkey. Okay, now they're using it for Donald Trump, because this is something not dissimilar to what Vladimir Putin would have done in Syria, right? Like the Bashar al-Assad government being like, hey, we need help right now, and then Putler says, you can do it. Here's some emotional support for you. He need banana. Yeah, that kind of thing. And now, given the Russification that has taken place in the American Central Command, they're now saying, Trump is also behaving in a way not dissimilar to Adolf Putler. Yeah, this is the initial meme. Yeah. Playing Russia and having lots of units and aircraft ready near Georgia for the 2008 war. I actually forgot about them after beating Chechnya. Yeah, Monkey Putin is like a classic meme. It's even funnier because Putin is allies with the new Syrian government. That is the most expected outcome of all time. It harkens back to that joke. Okay, that the whole joke is that, yes, Putler has no friends whatsoever, only immediate goals. He doesn't give a shit. That's why I always laugh whenever people are like, Vladimir Putin is engaging in an anti-imperialist war against the Western forces. It's like, that's not true. That's never been, never really been true. Lindsey Graham says Trump needs to help champion ally UAE. Anyway. Okay. Borzo Daragai says the UAE, the fact that, or Sultan Al Ali, the fact that the Arab League is silent while the IRGC targets the UAE and threatens shipping is unacceptable. Why haven't we heard clear condemnations on these attacks? The pattern is obvious, and the ambition to expand influence across the Gulf is no secret. Silence at this point isn't neutrality, it's complicity. I wonder why the GCC is not saying a goddamn thing about the UAE being pummeled again. Perhaps it has something to do with the fact that the United Arab Emirates has literally decided to become, Muslim Israel. They left the GCC, and on top of that, they said, yeah, we're backing America and Israel all the way. The UAE allowed itself to be turned into an Israeli base at a time when not just the Arab world, but much of the entire planet has turned against Israel as a genocidal rogue state. Now, the UAE advocates are frustrated that no one is coming to its defense. Of course, no one's coming to his defense. It's really funny that America is not even coming to the UAE's defense, by the way. What's happened since Trump announced his plan to move ships out of the Hormuz, says Sina Tusi, senior fellow at CI Policy. UAE appears central to it, and indeed to contingency plans to restart the war. Iran has responded with reported attacks on UAE and expanded its control zone over all UAE ports. Tehran isn't letting up. Or not, sorry, the UAE didn't leave the GCC. The UAE left OPEC. I apologize. Which, is the center of power for the GCC. The cartel that is OPEC Plus, is the only reason why the GCC has power. Trita Parsi analysis on drop site. All right, we'll look at friend of the show Trita Parsi's take on this. But just in, President Trump said Washington will launch a maritime effort. Oh, this was last night. President Trump said Washington will launch a maritime effort starting Monday morning, which has already started. Okay. To escort foreign vessels out of the Strait of Hormuz, citing requests from countries with ships stranded amid regional tensions. Trump described the plan, Project Freedom, as a humanitarian mission and said any interference from Iran will be met forcefully. He also said, I'm fully aware that my representatives are having very positive discussions with the country of Iran and that these discussions could lead somewhere very positive for all. Iran had also released some demands that are basically the same as the previous demands, but parsing it up in a short-term and long-term negotiations process. They did that yesterday. But what's funny about all of this is that All the oil futures pumping from Operation Freedom has already been wiped out by the missile and drone attacks on the UAE, lol. Yeah. The interesting predicament here is that it seems as though the Trump administration is going to continue conducting military operations rather than engaging Iran diplomatically. So, money molestation is still taking place. And of course, this kind of, according to Trita's analysis at the very least, this kind of actually leans into Iran's goals, right? If Iran's goals were to restart the war, if Iran believes that it can hold out and continue punishing the global energy markets, continue punishing America this way militarily, then, as I said, it was either going to be Israel or America that restarts the military campaign. And here we are. America is going back up the escalation ladder instead of de-escalating. All right. So let's get back to it here.
Unmanned platforms, so things like Reaper drones, and 15,000 service members who are now staying there to respond, essentially, if Iran does attack any of these ships trying to pass through the strait. And that is exactly what happened this morning. According to Admiral Cooper, the Iranians began launching drones, cruise missiles, and small boats at some of these ships, including U.S. Navy ships. And the U.S. military then responded by blowing up about 6 of these small Iranian boats using Apache and Seahawk helicopters. Now, it's important to note here that Admiral Cooper did not say whether or not this means that the ceasefire is over, given that the Iranians and the Americans are now trading shots, essentially, in that strait. He would only say that the U.S. is going to continue to act defensively to try to protect these ships, as well as, of course, its own assets. And one other thing is that he really emphasized that there are no escorts going on right now of these commercial vessels in this area by the U.S. military. Instead, they say that this kind of overarching defensive package that they have built up in that area is creating deterrence. Now, the Iranians, they might have a different perception of that because, of course, they continue to try to take shots at these ships in the waterway. But the U.S. military is saying, look, it's better for us to have this big overall
Your audio has issues. It keeps sparking. No, it's CNN VODs. CNN VODs have notoriously had that one weird crunch that happens all the time. We don't know why. But
presence here rather than escort each ship one by one through the strait, which could actually leave them more vulnerable in the end, Boris.
The conflict overspilling from the tensions in the Strait of Hormuz back onto land, back to where it was before the ceasefire went into place almost a month ago, as well as those missiles from Iran hitting the UAE, well, 3 intercepted, as you say, 1 hitting that port of Fujairah. Also in Oman, a tiny seaside hamlet in the peninsula that sticks up into the Strait of Hormuz. That was hit, 2 people injured in a civilian residence there as well. So not just limited to the UAE, but Oman as well getting dragged back into this. As CENTCOM has been saying, they've been able to support what President Trump is calling Project Freedom, and that is an effort for humanitarian reasons to guide commercial vessels that have been stuck now for 2 months inside the Gulf, out through the Strait of Hormuz, out to deliver their goods to the rest of the world. That has involved at least 1 guided missile destroyer, according to CENTCOM, passing through the Strait of Hormuz today and getting into the Gulf. 2 U.S.-flagged commercial vessels making it out, but then a confrontation, according to the Iranian media, IRGC, saying that they confronted with rapid and quick actions preventing a U.S. naval vessel getting into the Strait of Hormuz. At least one Iranian media saying that there were shots fired at the U.S. vessels. Now, CENTCOM has denied that. Now, what does that very complicated and rapidly developing picture look like? It looks like what was conversations about a talks process has turned into significant kinetic activity. The Iranians, though, the ball is in their court to respond to the proposal put to them by the White House over the weekend.
Nick, is it fair to say that this is still technically a ceasefire if you're seeing that kind of attack against Gulf allies and the U.S. response?
What's his name? What did he say? That was weird. That was a moment. That was a weird moment. Okay, let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. He didn't mean it. I wasn't alone, it seems, in hearing the words that came out of his mouth, but let's just keep going.
Against these boats in the strait?
I think it's really in question. I spoke with Iranian officials on Friday here, and they said they were very concerned that any easing of blockades around the Strait of Hormuz, they were very concerned that the United States would move in with the Navy to try to take control there. So what appears to be happening by projecting the effort to guide these commercial vessels out of the Strait of Hormuz, it has sort of upped, if you will, that tension, that suspicion on Iran's part that plays into their lack of trust about what the United States' real intentions here are. I have to say, despite that, we've seen these spikes in tensions before, and after a few days, things can potentially calm down. But Iran, again, has escalated beyond the tensions with the U.S.
Is there a world where we actually look at this stuff sincerely? Iran has escalated tensions. Buddy, there is currently a tolling process on the Strait of Hormuz and a negotiations process. None of this would have happened if America didn't decide to bomb Iran alongside Israel in an act of perfidy during a previous negotiations process. This is ridiculous. Iran has escalated? What do you mean? They brought Iran to the negotiations table and then said, F off. What is supposed to happen here? What are they supposed to do? Just not maintain their leverage? Of course they're going to maintain their leverage. This doesn't make any sense. But he's talking about today's escalation. No. Am I missing something? Yes. The reason why Iran is doing that when it wasn't doing it yesterday is because America has decided to force their assets through the Strait of Hormuz. That's the reason. Instead of negotiating with Iran, America has chosen military escalation once again. So obviously, Iran is going to retaliate. I don't know why we behave as though our enemies, like our foreign adversaries, are incapable of making rational decisions or incapable of advancing their own interests. Or if they do advance their own interests, we treat it as though it's like totally ridiculous. We make it seem as though there's not two parties. We make it seem as though there's not two parties to this negotiations process, that they're just doing this for no reason, out of nowhere.
And has now targeted the UAE and Oman, and this really could lead to a potential escalation, a kinetic escalation. If it does, and that continues for the next couple of days, then I think talks will really get sidelined, and it'll be hard to restart them in a meaningful way. Even that's really in question, just because this has played into Iran's fears. They would now say, why would we get around the table again if this is what the United States is going to do?
And Nick Robertson live for us in Pakistan. Thank you so much. Erica?
So let's take you now to the White House. CNN's Kevin Liptak is there. So yesterday, Kevin, we had President Trump saying that the U.S. was having very positive discussions with Iran. Now, on the heels of what we've just heard, of course, from Nick, what changed?
Well, I have to say, we've been getting some mixed signals about exactly what the status of these talks are. You know, 2 days before the president said that they were productive, he said that the latest Iranian proposal was not acceptable.
Yes, he wasn't saying the N-word, chat. He was saying his name and then going, after, okay?
And so it's not precise.
Come on, lock in. We got it, okay? Now it's being a little childish, okay? we're behaving like little babies. Okay. Ooh. Come on.
Precisely clear where exactly those talks stand, and certainly it's unclear now that we have seen this exchange of fire between the U.S. and Iran.
FARS, a military-informed source. The fire in the UAE was the result of the U.S. Army's adventurism. Following the explosion of widespread fire at the oil facilities of the Fujairah port and the attribution of it to the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran, a military-informed official said the Islamic Republic had no pre-planned program to attack the mentioned oil facilities, and what happened was the result of U.S. Army's adventurism to create a passage for the illegal transit of ships through the forbidden routes of the Strait of Hormuz, and the U.S. Army must be held accountable for it. U.S. statesmen must end the ugly behavior of using force and diplomacy and cease military adventurism in this sensitive oil region that affects the economy of all countries worldwide. Okay, but have you thought about, I live in Fujairah, should I move? That's crazy. You made us do it. I mean, yeah, that is what they're saying, because it's true. If there was a tit for tat war going on, and then they set up a ceasefire, okay, and then America violated the principles of the ceasefire, then yeah, of course they're going to retaliate. What are we talking about? Because if they don't retaliate, then they have nothing. If they don't retaliate, they have no leverage. Why would they not maintain their leverage? I think we have to remember, Iran was attacked first, okay? We got to go back to like 60 plus days ago when Iran was at the negotiations table saying, we will lean into your maximalist demands. We will cave to your demands. We will concede to them as long as you give us sanctions relief. Of course, they have to reestablish that deterrence. There is no ceasefire process. Yeah, Ross Douthat is going to think these boys are going on an epic adventure. This is classic. Yeah. Adventurism in this circumstance means like erratic and decentralized modes of violence. Like it's just irrational, erratic violence. Okay, that's what adventurism is. It doesn't mean it's not a positive thing. It's a negative thing. Okay. The reason why I'm explaining it one more time is because a lot of people don't know, and I use the term adventurism as with a negative association to it, and yet people often think that means going on an adventure. You know, it's not a positive thing. Okay. Yeah. W adventures. Okay. Iranian officials have been abnormally quiet despite over 3 hours of strikes being reported in the UAE. Well, they released the statement already.
In the Strait of Hormuz, I think it was clear leading up to the president's decision to put this new initiative into place that he had been growing relatively frustrated with the stasis that had occurred. The war was not happening because the ceasefire was in place, but the strait was also not reopened, and the talks seem as if they were deadlocked. And this seems to have been his attempt to try and break some of that stalemate to get the ships flowing through this very critical waterway. But of course, the risk there is that the Iranians...
Why is Iran attacking the UAE and not Israel? I don't know. Maybe because currently, as it stands, the United Arab Emirates, which can be seen as an extension of America and Israel, is participating in breaking through the blockade alongside the United States of America. Perhaps that's the reason why the UAE is being attacked.
Fire on some of these ships. The ceasefire is off, and all of a sudden the U.S. is back at war with Iran. It had been, I think, unclear this morning what exactly Project Freedom would entail. American officials were quick to point out that this was not an escort mission. The word the president used was guide these ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Just in the last hour, we have heard from the head of Central Command, Brad Cooper, describing this as a, quote, a multiple layer effort using aircraft, using ships to sort of create a coordination cell that would allow these ships.
Also, Israel did send Iron Dome batteries, apparently. An Israeli air defense system deployed to the UAE was used to intercept an Iranian missile today, CNN reports. It was recently reported that Israel deployed at least one Iron Dome battery. Bro, if I'm Ukraine, I'm pissed, by the way. Dude, famously, if you recall, in the early days of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Zelensky came out and was like, Mr. President, we would like to get the Iron Dome, okay? And Israel, because of its, neutral allegiance to Russia, said off. They literally refused to give Ukraine an Iron Dome or any Iron Dome batteries whatsoever. They said, oh, we can't let them fall in the hands of our enemies, Russia. So in the eyes of Israel now, the United Arab Emirates is worthy of an Iron Dome defense system as opposed to Ukraine. If I am Ukrainian, if I am Zelensky, I look at this and I go, what the are you guys doing? Well, Ukraine kind of well without, though. That is crazy. You think it would not have been good to rush ship a bunch of Iron Dome batteries in especially the beginning? Are you crazy? To to population centers especially? You would have avoided civilian casualties. It's crazy that Israel was like, now Ukraine, you. UAE, sure, you can have some Iron Dome defense batteries. You know, you can have some. Ow. I just hit my foot. I'm just saying, look at the priorities here. If I'm Ukraine, I'm pissed. They are spending my missiles. It's not ours to give, it's Israel's. First of all, it absolutely is ours. What are you talking about? It's a collaborative project. The idea that like Israel gets to make these decisions on their own is so funny. Okay, dude. Sure. It's not the case at all.
To go through the safest channel in the Strait of Hormuz, and just by their presence, try and provide some reassurance to these shipping companies and to the pilots of these vessels that it was in fact safe to transit. Now, what we've seen this morning is, yes, Central Command says that some vessels have gone through, but overall, traffic is still down, so it remains to be seen just how effective this approach will be.
For the last 3 weeks, the US Navy has been blockading ships from leaving or reaching Iranian ports. But now the mission is expanding with what President Trump calls Project Freedom. No naval escorts as such, but an attempt to guide neutral shipping.
Yeah, this was also funny too. The Volodymyr Zelensky, in any normal country, purchasing stolen goods is an act that entails legal liability. This applies in particular to the grain stolen by Russia. Another vessel carrying such grain has arrived at a port in Israel and is preparing to unload. This is not and cannot be legitimate. Joel Petlin goes, question for Grok. How many other countries in the world are getting shipments of stolen Ukrainian grain? And how many of them has Zelensky called out for it? Implying that the Jewish president of Ukraine is somehow anti-Semitic for singling out Israel, taking advantage of stolen, Russian theft of Ukrainian grain. What a unbelievable situation. Zelensky's Jewish, by the way. Yeah. 800 Patriot missiles were used for air defense in just 3 days in the Middle East. Ukraine received 604 years of full-scale war. Russia, Iran, and North Korea form a new axis of evil. Ukraine was the first to confront this axis. We continue to fight, but we need support. The free world must stop managing this threat and start defeating it. Like, if there's one country that is more worthy of these defenses, I would say it's Ukraine. Like, Ukraine was illegally invaded by Russia, okay? Illegally invaded and occupied by Russia. Under the standards of international law, not that it matters, obviously. We all know that it's not worth anything. There is a legitimate reason to aid in the defense of Ukraine. We bombed Iran. There was no reason for us to bomb Iran at all, okay? So what doesn't make any sense is for Ukraine to, on the one hand, get mad about how many Patriot missiles were used to defend the Gulf nations after we decided to bomb Iran, while simultaneously be like, no, but we got to keep up the fight. It doesn't make any sense. Israel